What if I told you that you're probably only using about 10% of what your cameras are capable of? Well, today, we're going to be taking a look at over 30 unknown camera features for the Galaxy S22 Ultra to help you unlock the full potential of your phone. When you're in video mode on the Galaxy S22 Ultra, you'll see an icon in the upper right corner. And if you tap that icon, you'll enable auto framing mode, which will start tracking you or anyone else that's in the frame. So when I sit down, it'll track me, and when I get up and walk around the deck, it'll continue to track me. This is great for filming sporting events, or if you ever have your phone set up on a tripod. You've all seen portrait photos before, but the Galaxy S22 Ultra also supports portrait video. To enable this, open up the camera app, then tap More, then tap Portrait Video. Now, this is going to work with both the rear and front-facing cameras, and the settings are going to be exactly the same, so I'm just going to show you what it looks like with the front-facing camera so you can actually see me when I'm talking to you. Now, you'll see that there's a bunch of different modes you can use. This particular mode is a glitch mode, which makes the background look like it's just glitching out. And if I tap this little icon in the upper right corner, I can change the intensity of that effect. And you'll see that I also have 4 other modes. So if you want just the typical background blur mode, you would pick this bottom one right here, and this is just the stereotypical portrait mode type of blur. Then the next one up from here is called Big Circle. This is a much more intense blur, and it takes any bright spots and turns them into big circles. And you can also change the intensity of this one as well. And lastly, you have a black and white mode. And if I bring this up a bit, you can see right behind me is a blue couch, but it's all showing up in black and white. And since you can't really change the intensity of a black and white mode, instead you get the option to increase the amount of vignetting there is on the image. The one caveat with this is that you can't remove this effect once you've recorded the video. So if it accidentally blurred something that it wasn't supposed to, you can't fix that later. That's why I recommend this for kind of general use if you want to try out the effect, but if you're recording something really important like your child's first birthday, I'd recommend not using this mode. If you go to the camera settings while you're in video mode, you'll see an option called Auto FPS. If you enable this, your S22 Ultra will reduce the video frame rate to get a brighter image and use interpolation to fill in the missing frames so you don't end up with a blurry video. The result is a brighter video without motion blur. For reference, here's a side-by-side comparison. The entire video is significantly brighter with Auto FPS enabled, so I highly recommend turning this feature on. Portrait photos now support night mode. To enable this, tap the moon icon that automatically appears when you take a photo at night or in the dark. This will take a long exposure photo and apply the blur effect. And if you want to turn the long exposure off, just tap the moon icon again. Nighttime portraits also work with the front-facing camera. It illuminates the center of the screen like a flash and takes a long exposure photo so you can get great selfie portrait shots even at night. If you took a photo and there's some things in that photo that you don't want to be there, you can simply remove them. All you have to do is tap the photo to bring up the settings, tap the edit icon, tap the 3 dots in the upper right corner, tap object eraser, then select the objects you want to erase. If the object isn't completely selected, you can just draw a box around the item and repeat that process for the rest of the items you want to remove from the image. Once you've selected everything, tap erase, and they'll be taken out of the photo. If it didn't work as well as you'd hoped, you can tap undo and try again, or if you like the results, tap done, then tap save. While this feature is great, it can't work miracles. So as you can see here, there's a lot of different things in the background, and if I were to tap myself to try to get me out of the picture, you'll notice that my arm isn't fully captured, and same thing with my shorts, not all of that is captured, and with my leg over here. Now you can technically draw extra areas to erase, but even still, once you do that, the erasing doesn't work too well. You can see that parts of the couch just don't look quite right. Part of the railing doesn't look right either. So while this is an incredible feature, it does have its limitations. If you wanted to take a picture of something, but ended up getting your shadow in the picture as well, you can simply remove your shadow by tapping the edit icon, tapping the 3 dots again, going back into the object eraser menu. Then instead of tapping on the shadow, just tap this little button here that says erase shadows. And just like that, the shadow was erased. If you took a picture through a window and you ended up with reflections of things behind you, you can quickly erase those reflections by tapping Erase Reflections. And just like that, the reflections in this upper left corner are gone. And to really show how good this is, I've zoomed in on the upper left corner so you can see the before and after. If you don't see these options here when you enter the Object Eraser menu, then back out of it, tap these 3 dots in the upper right corner, tap Labs, then enable each of the settings. If you tap this hand icon while in video mode, you'll enable something called Super Steady mode, and this will give you the smoothest video from a smartphone that I have ever seen. For reference, here's what a video would look like without any stabilization turned on. And here's what the video looks like when I enable Super Steady mode. In this video, the S22 Ultra is being held with one hand while running as fast as possible. The one caveat with this is that you will be limited to a max resolution of 1080p at 60 frames per second. You can add a background blur to any photo, even if it wasn't taken with the Galaxy S22 Ultra. To prove it, I'm going to open up my most recent video, then scrub all the way back to the beginning, pause that, take a screenshot here, then I'm going to open the screenshot, tap the three dots in the upper right corner, then tap Add Portrait Effect. And just like that, the background's been blurred, and I can even change the intensity with this slider right here. I'm sure you already know that if you tap more within the camera app, you'll get a bunch of other camera options. But you might not know the difference between slow motion and super slow-mo. Slow motion is your typical 240 frames per second, like what you would get on an iPhone. Super slow motion enables 960 frames per second. That's 4 times slower than what you can get on an iPhone. To show you just how incredible this is, here's a bubble popping at just 240 frames per second. Now here it is again at 960 frames per second. And here's another video showing both speeds side by side. As you can tell, the difference is quite dramatic. Unfortunately, there are 2 caveats with this mode. First, it can only record at 1280 by 720 resolution, which is about half the resolution of 1080p. And second, it can only capture for about 1 second, so you have to time it right. One thing that helps with this is the motion detection feature, which you can enable by pressing the icon in the upper left corner. Then you can move this box to wherever the motion is going to be, and when the motion is detected within this box, it'll automatically start to capture. And in case you're wondering, you can also increase or decrease the size of this box. You probably already know about Single Take, which automatically captures a series of videos, photos, portrait shots, and more, but what you might not have known is that if you tap this icon in the upper left corner, you can actually customize what's captured. So if you don't like the boomerang clips or slow motion clips, just uncheck them and they won't be generated. Occasionally, when you take a scenic photo, you'll see this icon that appears in the bottom right corner, and it looks kind of like a stopwatch. If you tap this, Samsung's going to analyze this image and create a 24-hour time-lapse from a single image. When you bring your phone closer to an object to take a picture of it, you may notice that it starts to get blurry. But if you tap this icon in the lower left corner, you'll enable something called Focus Enhancer, and this is going to switch to whichever camera is going to get you the best image at that distance. And this allows you to get much, much closer to an object. So much so that the S22 Ultra takes some of the best macro photos I've ever seen from a phone. If you're traveling to another country and you need to quickly translate some text either in a menu or maybe on a sign, just go into your camera app, then tap More, then tap Bixby Vision at the top, then tap this little icon in the bottom left corner, and your S22 Ultra will automatically translate all of the text in real time. Besides translating text, you can also tap this T icon and extract text from anything your camera can see. And that would be useful for copying things like coupon codes that you want to use online. And if you tap the search icon, Bixby Vision will snap a picture of the object and try to find similar objects so you know what you're looking at. And it looks like it found it right here. So if I tap this and scroll down, I'll see that this is the Rode Wireless Go. If you're using the front-facing camera, you can tap this aspect ratio icon here and enable a 40 megapixel selfie. This is especially useful when you're taking a selfie in front of a landscape or a cityscape. It allows you to really zoom in and see all the details. And for comparison, here's what zooming in would look like with the standard 10 megapixel selfie. Regardless of which selfie mode you're in, if you just raise your hand in front of the camera, it'll automatically start a 2-second timer, then take the picture. If you notice that the selfie camera isn't quite capturing your skin tone correctly, you can tap the settings icon, then tap selfie color tone, and you can try changing it from natural to bright. If you're taking a picture with the rear facing camera, then tap the aspect ratio here, you can take a 108 megapixel photo. This is perfect for taking pictures of architecture, landscapes, cityscapes, or for really big group photos so you could zoom in and see everyone's face in detail. If you really want to go crazy with your 108 megapixel pictures, you can tap this icon in the upper right corner, and this will enable Detail Enhancer, which makes a dramatic difference in the amount of detail you get out of the picture. To put this into perspective, here's what it looks like when you zoom in on a photo with Detail Enhancer disabled. Now here's what it looks like with it enabled. The one caveat with this is that the picture does take a few seconds to process, and you won't be able to take another picture until the previous one finishes processing. The 100x zoom feature has been substantially improved. Here's a wide shot of a large turtle in the grass. Now here's a 30 times zoom of that shot, and here is a 100 times zoom of the shot. Now while this certainly isn't worth hanging on the wall, the level of detail from that far away is incredible. And here's another 100x zoom shot taken of a full moon just a few days ago. And another great feature with this extreme zoom is that it now also supports object tracking. And this makes it a lot easier to keep your camera lined up when taking a long distance photo. While you're in the camera app, if you tap the settings gear in the upper left corner, then enable Scene Optimizer, then tap the text, and make sure Scan Documents is enabled, then back out to the camera, you'll get the option to automatically crop any documents, receipts, or business cards you in the camera app. So if I tap the Tap to Scan text here, it's going to take that picture and bring up the cropped version. And if I need to make some adjustments, I can just grab one of these corners and make that adjustment. And when I'm done making adjustments, I'll just tap Save, and the cropped image will be saved to my gallery. And speaking of scanning things with your camera, if you aim it at a QR code, it's going to automatically read the QR code and give you a link to the address. And if you tap Show Options, you'll be able to open it in a browser or just copy it. If you want to make it easier to take a selfie, just take the shutter button and drag it towards the center and move it wherever you'd like. This makes it much easier to take a picture with one hand. And when you're done using the floating shutter button, just drag it back down. And speaking of dragging down, if you drag the shutter button down, you'll initiate a burst photo. And this will burst up to 100 photos. If you're in photo mode and something starts happening that you want to film immediately, all you have to do is hold down the shutter button and you'll start filming as long as you hold down the button. And if you want to stay in video mode, just drag the shutter button towards the center. This will also allow you to start using all the different zoom modes. One big caveat with this is that you'll only be recording at 1920 by 1440 resolution, which is a 4:3 aspect ratio. This means that not only will you be missing out on 4K recording, but the video will be more of a square shape. And when you try to watch it back on a regular TV, you're going to end up with large black bars on each side of the video. And that's because a standard TV uses a much wider 16:9 aspect ratio. You can technically get around this by switching your photo aspect ratio from 4:3 to 16:9, but then your photos end up looking less appealing, so I don't recommend it. And no matter what you change for settings, you still won't be able to get that 4K resolution that's only available in video mode. If you go to Settings while in photo mode, you'll see an option called Shot Suggestions. And what this will do is use artificial intelligence to put a little dot on your screen to help you line up your shots to get better photos. If you want to change the order of your camera modes, just tap More, then tap this plus icon in the bottom right corner. Then you can either drag these modes down to your standard modes, or you can long press one of these on the bottom and drag it around to a different position. And if at any point you don't want to have quick access to one of these modes, just long press it and drag it back up. If you tap Settings, then scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see an option called Settings to Keep. And if you tap this, you can select a bunch of different settings to keep every time you open up the camera app. So by default, whenever you open up the camera app, it's going to take you back into the standard photo mode. But if you want, you can check this first box and it'll open back up into whatever mode you had opened last. You can also save the selfie angle if you always prefer to use the wide angle instead of the narrow angle. You can keep all of your filters applied. You can have super steady mode always enabled, and you can keep the previously used portrait zoom level. While we're in the settings, I also want to point out this setting for location tags. What this will do is add location information directly into your photos and videos. This is especially useful when you go on vacation because any photos or videos you take on that vacation will automatically get grouped together by the location tag so you can quickly see just your vacation photos whenever you want. Nighttime photos on the S22 Ultra are incredibly bright. For reference, here's a more accurate representation of how dark the deck was when I took the previous photo. If the nighttime photos end up being too bright and you want to tone those back a little bit, just exit out of the nighttime photo mode and use a regular photo. If you're in night photo mode and you want the brightest possible image you can get, tap the exposure time in the bottom right corner and set that to max. This is going to give you a maximum of a 30-second exposure depending on how steadily you hold the camera. And this will make for an insanely bright image, which is great for setting your phone up on a tripod and getting pictures of stars. If you're taking a picture and the image is either too bright or too dark, you can tap the image, then drag this slider to make it either brighter or darker. The S22 Ultra has no shortage of image editing options that you can get to by tapping this little pencil icon here. You get the typical things like orientation and filters, but if you tap the next icon, you get a bunch more options. You can change the light balance, the brightness, exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, saturation, tint, and even the color temperature. And tapping the smiley face just allows you to start drawing on the image. But if you don't want to dig through all of these settings and figure out what the right things are to change, you can just tap this little wand icon in the bottom left corner, and Samsung will automatically analyze the image and make the changes that it thinks needs to be made. Then you'll see a little yellow dot next to each of the settings that Samsung changed. If you want to save even more time with this, you can back out of this and just tap the 3 dots in the bottom right corner, then tap Remaster Picture. And you can slide this bar left and right to see the changes. And you can even zoom and pan on the image to see the changes even better. If you take a lot of group photos with family and friends with your phone set up on a tripod, then you're going to love the fact that the S Pen has Bluetooth functionality, and you can take a picture while you're in the camera app just by pressing the S Pen button. And if you guys want to see over a dozen incredibly useful and powerful S Pen features, go ahead and check out that video over there. No, seriously, click the video. You guys are going to learn a ton. Yeah, what he said.